Today on episode 37 of the Play Guitar Podcast, I'm playing solos over minor chords. I show you how and what to play to make you sound awesome. Also, I have some listener feedback, so stay tuned. Welcome to episode 37 of the Play Guitar Podcast. I'm Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for years, this is the show that'll help you become the guitarist that you always wanted to be. Hey everyone, thank you for joining me today. What a great week. I've been hearing from a lot of folks about last week's topic. That's getting back into guitar playing after you've quit for a while. You just had to put the guitar down. Quitting guitar, sometimes I think it's an epidemic. It's everywhere. Everyone I meet, they've started guitar at some point and then they just quit. And you know what that does for me? It gets me started trying to motivate those people to pick that guitar back up again, get the guitar out, set it out so you can see it. Play it every day. That's just me. That's how I am. But I loved all the comments. I'm so happy I could be a small part of listeners getting back to something that's been such an important part of my life. So, let's get to today. It's what we call a rainy night in Georgia here. This podcast almost didn't happen. The power went out tonight when I was going to record it. So it's late. This is a late episode, but it's not the hurricane that's on the way, which may or may not be heading this direction. It's too close for comfort for me. But had a small storm today, knocked power out. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. I was getting creative about how could I get a podcast recorded without power. And I went to my laptop to see how much power I had left. And I think I could have done it. I was getting ready to do that. I was going to have my phone with my notes on it and use the laptop for the recording, use my ATR 2100, plug it right in there and get a podcast done today. But right before that happened, everything came back on. It's awesome. I'm able to do it. So I'm hoping I usually do release these Wednesday early in the morning on Wednesday in Eastern Daylight Times, which we're in now. I usually have them about 3 o'clock in the morning, and it works out good. It goes out to everyone, and I think I'm going to be able to keep that schedule today. So I'm very happy to be here. I didn't think it was going to happen. What I'm talking about today is soloing over minor chords and how to sound awesome when you're doing that. There's so many situations where being well-versed in all the different colors that you can use over minor chords is a good thing. And it's not just when you think of playing over minor songs, minor chords, you think sad. That's what everyone tells you. Major equals happy, minor equals sad. Well, not always. Sometimes you can. Have you ever started to learn a song and realize that, hey, this is in a minor key, but I didn't really realize it didn't actually sound so sad. You've got a lot of heavy songs, hard rock, heavy metal songs that are written in minor keys. You've got a lot of modal jazz songs and fusion songs that are in minor keys that don't sound sad. They just it's more of an atmosphere type thing than, a crying in your beer sad song. So I'm going to go over 5 of the most effective scales and modes to get the most out of your minor chords and your chord progressions. But before I get started, I always want to remind you, I've got a video lesson. It's called Get Your Blues Soloing Under Control. If you're interested in blues soloing, if that's something that you've really wanted to do, take a look at this. It's really helping a lot of people. I've had a lot of people sign up for it. It's got 6 steps, It's a foundational video. It helps you play killer blues solos, no time at all. And just go to freeblueslesson.com and you can sign up for that. And you also get all of my other stuff, you get emails, and it tells you about my podcasts and videos and all the other stuff. So go ahead and head on over there to freeblueslesson.com. And thanks again for joining me today. We're going to go ahead and get started. So let's get on to the main topic. How to play over minor chords and sound awesome. 9 times out of 10, the first chord that you learn is a major chord. It could be, in the open position, the C chord, or it might be the G chord, the open G chord. Most are introduced to this new world of chords by some sort of a major chord. Why is that? Why is that usually the case? Well, because they sound happy. And they're mostly pretty easy to play. Not all of them, but some that mostly are pretty easy to play. And they're usually in most of the beginner songs that we all learn. It's a good, positive way to start down the path of playing songs. The major chord. Nothing wrong with it. But then you start to learn the rest of the open position major chords until it happens. You run out of them. You're done with your open position major chords and you move on to something new, something different. Usually it's the A minor chord. And you say, well, let's see here. You say, hey, what is this? This is something different. I remember when I first did it, I remember feeling, hey, now I'm getting somewhere. This is a whole different sound and a whole different feeling. And I've got access to this now. I can play this in songs. I loved it. I loved the minor chords. And then when you move on, you get to learning chord progressions, putting the chords together. The same thing happens. You start off, you focus in the beginning on major chord progressions and the blues. You do a little bit of blues. And until you really start learning popular songs and you start to make a different discovery. That minor keys are everywhere in popular songs. And learning to play lead guitar over popular songs, it flipped everything on its head for me. When you want to solo over rock, especially rock, hard rock, minor it's the main event. As my ear grew and I started enjoying other styles of music, it was evident that using other scales to play over minor tones, a minor tonal center. It was something I needed to know, something I needed to be comfortable with, and I needed to sound confident doing that. So today, I'm going to work my way, starting from the easiest scale to the most challenging scale or mode that you can use to sound awesome playing over minor chords. And they are, number 1, minor pentatonic, that we all know and love. Number 2 is the natural minor scale. 3 is the Dorian mode. 4 is the melodic minor scale. And 5 is the harmonic minor scale. So it's been a long time since I started learning the guitar. For some reason, I remember a lot of what I was doing and how I started learning the guitar. I learned the usual beginning riffs like everybody else. And I had Smoke on the Water, all those kind of things. I had no idea what the chords were to those songs. I didn't care. I just played them just like everyone else. I thought it was cool. I was getting these sounds. Then I started learning chords. And from chords, I went to learning simple songs. Started learning a bunch of easy songs. And even in these books that they give you, these beginner books, that I had a few of them, I would learn a bunch of those easy songs that they have in there. And I never played them again. They weren't songs that I wanted to learn, but they worked. They were easy. There was the basic beginner books that you can buy. I could only take so much of those songs that I started to venture out into the songs I wanted to play. which at the time were rock songs. And I was listening to, and I really wanted to play mostly Van Halen, like You Really Got Me, and Led Zeppelin, like Whole Lot of Love, those kind of songs. So eventually I started running into some minor songs. I think the first song was Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You by Led Zeppelin. That had a sad sound to it. It was very sad. It was it started on I'm pretty sure it was an A minor chord. And I was very excited to be able to play something that sounded different than all the other stuff that I've been learning before. So fast forward a while to when I was ready to start playing lead guitar, I learned my easy open position major scales first. I think that's what most of us do. And it seemed like, it seemed like major chords and major sounds were always the focus of the lessons I was taking. But then I was ready to play some solos over my favorite songs, something I wanted to do. And I noticed something. I started to figure out that a lot of the songs that I was listening to, that I liked, that I was gravitating to, they were in minor keys. And I didn't even realize it. They didn't necessarily sound sad. They were powerful hard rock songs. And I hadn't even really thought about it. The sadness of the minor third, it didn't even get to me because I guess it was overshadowed by the power of the songs. Songs like Ain't Talking About Love and Rock You Like a Hurricane, songs like that. So not only did I start finding minor sounds in hard rock, I was also, a band I really loved was The Police, which was not such a hard rock band. But I love the song Walking on the Moon. And the chords in this song, I just had no idea how to get these chords. They just floored me. I would listen and I would think, what in the world is that? What are these crazy chords? Andy Summers was a guitar player, and he would play all sorts of stuff. And there was this minor 11th chord I love. I've talked about that in other podcasts. And it was in that song. I just loved it. It was rare that any of the songs that I was wanting to learn were in major keys. They were all in minor keys. And then I started getting into the blues, and those songs, they all had a bunch of 7th chords in them. And my major scales didn't work. They sounded bad over these songs. They sounded terrible. So for me, I had to figure out what they were really doing, and I needed to really understand how to play over minor. And that's why we're talking about this today. All the beginner things I learned, they were great, but they were leaning, they were just going the way for what I was leaning away, I guess is what I'm trying to say, from what I was listening to. The more heavy music I learned, the more minor songs I found. So now, as I started exploring other styles of music, enjoying other things, I'd find a balance in those styles of majors and minor and dominant sounds. But at that time in my life, minor was the focus. So what happened? I started asking some questions. I needed to know this stuff. I asked other guitar players and teachers that I was learning from. I said, how do you play over this song? And usually I guess, oh, that's easy. You just play the blues scale. I said, what? What's the blues scale? What is that? I say, oh yeah, well, you just play this. You just play and what they gave me wasn't exactly the blues scale. That was the minor pentatonic scale, but I didn't care. I didn't care what it was. It sounded great over my favorite songs. It matched. and I remembered I was thinking, well, why did I spend all this time learning all these major scales and chords and things when all I want to do is play the cool stuff? The things that my pentatonic scales would sound good in front of. So that's what I'm getting into today. I'm going to show you the different minor bass scales and modes that open up a whole new world of soloing for me. And the first one is what we just talked about, the minor pentatonic scale. The minor pentatonic scale is usually the first scale that most guitar players learn when they start getting into lead guitar. Why? Because it's easy to remember, it's easy to play, It sounds great over a lot of different things, a lot of different chord progressions and styles of music. And chances are that you've heard that scale today in some song you heard today, and you didn't even realize it. It's in everything. Pentatonic scales are the basis for so many melodies in folk songs from around the world. It's Irish folk songs and Chinese folk songs, blues music. It's the people's scale. It's the scale that sounds good to common people like me. So I always thought it was very interesting how folk music of all these different cultures that really had barely anything to do with each other would use the same scales to build their music. And their music didn't sound anything like each other's, but they used the same building blocks, the pentatonic scale. Well, what is it? What is the pentatonic scale? It's just what it says. The prefix is penta, which means 5. It's a 5-note scale. And there are many different pentatonic scales, not just the ones we're going to talk about today, but today's the minor pentatonic scale. And it uses the first, the flat third, the fourth, the fifth, and the flat seventh. Those are the strong notes of the minor sound. If you take a look at it, it's basically the arpeggio notes of the minor seventh chord with an added fourth in there. It sounds a lot like that minor 11th chord that I just played for you. And I like it so much. They're very strong notes. Because the notes are so strong, they're so inside, it's hard to make this scale sound bad. It's a very consonant sound over a minor chord. So how do I play it? Well, it's the classic 1-4, 1-3, 1-3, 1-3, 1-4, 1-4 pattern that you see all the time. And let's see, I'm going to put this, for those who are watching on video, I'm doing a video podcast too. I'm going to put that on the screen right there, the minor pentatonic. Let's see here. And if you're listening to just the regular audio, if you're in your car or you're at work or something like that, you can always go to the show notes page. I'll have these tabs on the show notes page, which is Play Guitar Podcast /037 for this show. But to really show you the difference and to bring home the small changes between all these scales, I'm going to do them all today in the key of A minor. And I'm going to base them all on pattern 1, which is around the 5th fret for A minor. This way you'll be able to see the difference. You'll be able to visualize how to make all the small changes between these scales on the fly if you ever just feel like getting a different sound instead of using the regular minor scale. So my goal for this is not to burn all these scales up and down the fretboard just yet. I just want you to see and hear the differences between these scales and make them part of your vocabulary. So I'm going to demonstrate this scale, the minor pentatonic scale, in A. Okay, so let's see here. So that was a A minor pentatonic scale over an A minor chord. Couldn't be any easier than that. It matches perfectly. Well, let's talk about what chords and other progressions sound good with this scale. The first was what I just played, playing over a static minor chord. You could play it over some sort of minor chord progression, a bunch of chords that start with a minor chord and end with a minor chord. You could play it over blues, over a blues progression with 7th chords. And we've already talked about this in my episode. It's called You're Already Playing Outside. And so even though seventh chords, they have a major third in them, and minor pentatonics have the minor third in them, it's a tension that sounds very good over that chord. And we went into that a great deal, but it's a great sound. It resonates with a lot of people, and what's neat about it's the first step in bringing a little bit of tension to your line. So go back and check that episode out if you want to. So I did a quick minor chord. I'll do a little blues progression right here for that too. That was just straight pentatonic, which is hard for me to not throw some other stuff in there. But there it is. So that's the example of the minor pentatonic scale over a blues progression right there. So I said something before about people calling it the blues scale. I heard that a lot when I first started. What's the difference between the blues scale and the minor pentatonic scale? A lot of people use these interchangeably. But it's different. There's a little bit something different there. The blues scale has an added flat 5 or sharp 4, depending on how you want to look at it. It's another added tension note that it's kind of sandwiched in between two strong notes, the 4th and the 5th. So it sounds very good in a kind of a tension and release kind of way. You can resolve that note to either one. So I'm going to play that same loop again, and I'm going to show you. Let me see the camera, make sure everybody can see this. Here's where it's thrown in. Just right there. And on the next octave, that note right there, it's an outside note. So we've added one note, which is an outside note, to the pentatonic scale, and we call it the blues scale. Let's take a listen to what it sounds like over the chords. A lot of people like to use that. It's a neat sound. I use it all the time, and we'll get into a little bit of that more in a different episode because we can use that in country music as well in a different way over major pentatonic scales. Get into that at a different time. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about modes a little bit. Excuse me. What is a mode? Enough of these pentatonics. Let's hear about modes and modes actually intimidate a lot of people. They hear the term mode and they think, oh, what's that? And then they start to look into it, and it gets a little funny because of the names of all the modes. They have these fancy, stuffy kind of names: Phrygian, Dorian, Mixolydian. But modes aren't tough at all. They're completely easy. They're super easy. It's just taking what you already know and getting some more mileage out of it. It's a different use of the scales that you already know, but you're just using them in a different way than it's intended. And we do that by changing the tonic note of the pattern. The notes are all the same in a scale pattern that you already know, and you know what the tonic note is. That's your strong note. But when you change the starting point, things they go a little differently. And they save you so much time for not having, you get all these new sounds just by starting on a different note of your scales. But you don't have to learn any new patterns. You're just using the patterns that you already know. Nothing easier than that. So you can get a different sounding scale, which is, I use that in air quote scale, from every note that you play, and you just make each note of the scale a new tonic note, and you got a whole new sound. So let's see, I'm going to change here to natural minor. This is our first mode that we're going to talk about today. So if you've ever played a regular old minor scale, the natural minor, like this. If you've ever played that before, you've already played a mode. It has another name. It's called the Aeolian mode. It's the sound you get when you change your strong note of the major scale, the regular old do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do scale. When you change that strong note, instead of using it as your one, you change it to the 6th degree of the scale. So in the case of C major, if you know your C major scales, you would start on the A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm going to go back to that in this position. I'm going to start on the A right here, but I'm going to play all the same notes of the C major scale, same pattern. There it is, the natural minor scale, or another word for it is the Aeolian mode. Why would you want to play that? Well, it's the most consonant full scale over minor chords and progressions that you can get. It's the minor scale. It's the basis for what we're doing today. And if you know a major scale already, then you already have the fingerings for the natural minor scale. So what is it? It's a 7-note scale. I like to call them full scales. And you have the 1, the 2, a flat 3, 4, 5, a flat 6, a flat 7, and a 1. That's the difference from the major scale. The major scale wouldn't have any flats. It would just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This has 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, and 1. Excuse me. So how do you play it? You use pattern 1 of the C major scale, start back on the 5th fret like I just did on the low E string, make that your new tonic note, and there you go. So what chords and progressions sound good with this scale? Well, we've got minor chords and minor chord progressions. Different ones like that. Here's some examples. I'm going to do, let's see here. I'm going to do. Okay, it's kind of a more of a rock kind of sound. You can also play it over like an A minor 7 to a D minor 7 is always nice. So there's some examples of playing the natural minor scale. It's pretty basic. But we're going to move on from there. We're going to build on top of that scale. So the next thing we're going to talk about is something called Dorian. This is one of our modes. It's a mode of the major scale. It starts from the second note of the scale. So if you were in C major, you would start on the second note of the scale, which is a D, and you'd make that the new tonic note. So you play from D to D using the C major scale, and you get something different. You get a minor sounding, air quotes, scale, because it's a mode, but it's a little different than natural minor. Well, why would you use Dorian? What would you use that for? You would use Dorian for a lot of different reasons. If you were playing jazz, where the chord structure is like a 2-5-1, the Dorian mode sounds very jazzy over that first. So here is here's A Dorian right here. Let's do that. So let's see here. This is A Dorian. So we have 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. It already sounds like the Allman Brothers a little bit, one of those build-ups. You can use the Dorian mode over static minor chords for an interesting sound. Dickie Betts from the Allman Brothers, which I was just kind of playing a little bit of that, he used Dorian all the time in his solos. He took advantage of the difference of this sound to add a more complex sound to his Southern rock leads. Let's talk about what it is. It's a 7-note mode. It's a child of a parent scale. It's almost exactly like the natural minor scale that we talked about before, except for one big difference. When you get to the 6th note of the natural minor scale, there's your 6th note right there. It raises that note up 1 fret. That's the only difference between natural minor and Dorian, is the 6th. It uses a major 6th. Let me switch this here. I've got it on. Here we go. There's our Dorian right there for those who are watching. And we've got the different notes marked in blue on that. So we have the 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, back to 1. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. Pretty neat. It's got a different, one small change makes it completely different. The structural notes, the important notes, they aren't changed. 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7. Those are the important notes in minor. It still functions the same, but that change to the 6th degree, it gives you kind of a blended sound. It takes that interval from the tonic note to the 6th of the major scale and adds it into the minor. It's very nice. And since we're only changing the 6th note, which is a non-essential note, it's very easy to use. You can throw it in all sorts of different places. So how do I play it? How do I think about even getting started with that scale? There's 2 ways of thinking when it comes to the Dorian mode. One, you can think of it as just like we talked about, as an adjustment to the 6th note of the natural minor scale. It's so easy. Just play your natural minor scale, find the 6th note, raise it up a fret, and there you go. You're in Dorian. You don't have to think so much. Just change one note. But what you find when you're really familiar with your scale patterns is when you raise that one note, the pattern starts to look very familiar. It looks just like one of the other patterns in the major scale. It looks like pattern 2 of the G major scale. Because it is. Because the A Dorian is the second, that A is the second note of a G major scale. You're just playing a G major scale now. That little change we made turned it into a whole new pattern. It leads us to the other way to play Dorian, and that is as a mode of a parent scale. like I said before, it's a scale with quotes, but it's, and that's what we were talking about, which was the playing a G major pattern 2 will give us an A Dorian. You just need to do a little backwards thinking for that. What major scale would I need to play so that the second note is what I'm after, the A? So, okay. So what chords and what progressions sound good with this scale? You can use minor triads, minor 7th chords. There's a lot of modal jazz tunes that tend to stay on one chord for a longer time that Dorian sounds great on. 2-5-1 progressions that we talked about in jazz, where you play over the... And also minor bass fusion and rock songs always sound great with the Dorian scale. So I'm going to do some playing here. The first one I'm just going to do is over an A minor 7th chord. You hear it right there? There's that 6th note, the one we arranged. Neat. It's a cool sound. Okay, so let's do another example. Let's see. I'm going to do an A minor to a D7 to a G major 7, like a jazz kind of thing. Well, I'm going to do it not so fast. I'm going to do about twice as long on each chord. So we have... I'll stop right there. So that's more of kind of a jazz kind of basic 2-5-1 sound that you can use the Dorian mode over. Okay, let's move on from there. Let's move on to something else. I'm going to get this set up here to something called melodic minor. Melodic minor. So we're moving on from modes, but we're staying in the same idea of changing a few notes to get a different sound. We've come to the melodic minor scale. The melodic minor scale, it's awesome. It's a completely blended sound. It has a lot of very cool uses. It's a complete combination of the minor scale and the major scale. And it has its roots. You hear about it a lot in classical music. And they have a different way of playing it. They have an ascending version, an ascending version, and a descending version. And they're different. The ascending is kind of like what we're going to play today, and the descending is more like the natural minor scale. What is the natural minor scale? I don't come at it from that direction. I come at it more from a jazz guitar approach, and I've never used the scale that way in two different ways. I've always used it just one way, as the melodic minor scale with some raised notes, which we're going to talk about in a second. Okay, why would we use the melodic minor scale over minor chords? Well, to give them another voice. And also there's a chord that you may run into called a minor major 7th chord. And this scale matches perfectly with that chord. We'll talk about that in a minute too. You can also use modes of the melodic minor scale. And that can get you into some advanced, like some fusion and jazz style things. And that's not really what we're talking about today. But once you get comfortable with the scale patterns of the melodic minor scale, it's not a big move to start getting some really advanced sounds. You can get the altered scale that comes to mind. That's the 7th mode of the melodic minor scale. You can try it over a dominant 7th chord. You get some really cool tension sounds if you're getting into more advanced kind of things. But let's talk about what it is. What is the melodic minor scale? Well, it's a 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to 1. So you have your first, second, flat 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, major 7th, and back to 1. So it starts off like a minor scale with the sad 3rd there, and ends happy like the major scale. It's kind of cut right in half, minor in the beginning and major at the end. And how do you play it? Well, there's 2 ways to think about it. You can think about it as just a major scale and lower your 3rd with a flat 3. Super easy. So here's major, and I'm going to take that 3rd and lower it 1 half step. It's a neat sound, okay? But there's another way to think about it. You could also think of it as a minor scale where you raise the 6th note and the 7th note. Either way you want to. Sometimes I think of it both ways. So what chords and progressions sound good with this scale? You can just use a regular minor triad. You could use a minor major 7th, which is a neat chord. I'll do one up high here. And then it also sounds great over various other chords when you use the modes of the scale, which is way beyond the scope of what we're talking about today. But the way this group of notes is set up it's pretty awesome. It's part half whole, kind of like the diminished scale, and part whole tone scale, part whole like the augmented scale. It's got the tense sound of the diminished and the floaty sound of the augmented scale. It's great for playing those over that altered sound over 7th chords, like I said before. But let's do some examples of the melodic minor scale. I'm just going to do one over just a regular A minor triad. So here we go. I was just kind of going up and down the scale for that one, but you can kind of start to hear the sound of it. It's a very different sound. And let's listen to it over the chord that really matches it perfectly is that minor major 7th sound. Okay, so kind kind of more of an out there kind of sound, but if you ever had that chord in a song, and it does happen, shows up sometimes, there's some way to get into it. All right, so the last one, we're running long on time here. We've got the harmonic minor scale. Harmonic minor is an awesome scale. It's definitely last but not least. It's got a very cool classical sound. It works well over heavy metal. It's awesome for fast runs, especially if you're playing it in 3-note per string, patterns where you can do a lot of legato stuff. Why would you play it? Well, it's got a really big space between two of the notes that creates a very distinctive sound. And it's very interesting and pleasing to listen to. So what is it? What is the harmonic minor? We've got 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, major 7th, sharp 7, and 1. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5. So this part right here, it's got a really neat sound. So how do you play it? The easy way is just take that natural minor scale and take the 7th note and just raise it 1. Super easy. Now you're in harmonic minor. What chords and progressions sound good with this scale? Well, minor triads sound good. That minor major 7th chord that we played would sound good on this too, because it has that major 7th. In jazz, you could play it on an A minor progression where the 5th chord is a dominant chord for people who are into that, jazz, and they understand what we're talking about. But even more important, you can ingvet, you could do power chord metal when you're in a minor kind of tonality. So I'll do a quick example. I'll do an A minor, and then I'll do something with some power chords. So let's see here. Okay, let's do something that's more power chord. I don't have a good metal sound, but this is going to have to do for right now. So we've got let's see here. Something like that. I just made that up on the spot. That went great. But you get the idea. You get the idea that you've got that kind of a sound. The sound where it goes for that lowered 6th and then the raised 7th. There's a big space there and gives a really neat sound. So I'm going to summarize right now with put it all together. Those are the scales and the modes you can play over minor chords to sound awesome. I went over my 5 favorite choices to play, over minor chords, which they were the minor pentatonic, natural minor, Dorian, melodic minor, and the harmonic minor. I showed what they are and the reasons why you would use them in different contexts, and played a bit so you could hear how they sound over minor chords. But I've got a question for you. Have you struggled playing over minor chords and minor chord progressions? Or if you're good with minor, what are your favorite scales and modes to play in minor situations? Let me know in the show notes at playguitarpodcast.com/037. This is listener feedback. This is where if you've got a comment or a question that I can help you with, I will try my best to help you. To get in touch, you can always email me at feedback@playguitarpodcast.com. You can tweet at me at playguitarpdcst, or you can use the comments on the show notes page or even the contact form. I'm pretty easy to get in touch with. So this week, I found something on the Facebook page that I hadn't looked at in a while, and Warren B left a wonderful review, and I wanted to thank him for that. And he said he was lucky enough to stumble across the podcast on Spotify on week 1, and he hasn't missed one since. His favorite episode is episode 16, which is Trapped in the Pentatonic Box, and he looks forward to Wednesdays and new episodes. Thank you, Warren, so much. I sure appreciate that review. It made my whole day when I saw that. I'm sorry I didn't get to it sooner. On email, I had one from Nick H, and he's put down the guitar, and now he's picking it back up again. He's super motivated. He wants to be playing at a high level again, even though he's got a very demanding life, just like I do. So he said some really nice things about the show, and he's ready to commit to a plan. So I just want to say, way to go, Nick. Thank you for the email. Really great hearing about you getting back to it again. So thanks, Nick. The next one was a great one from Ryan, and he's working on being a musician and getting back to being serious on the guitar. And those are my kind of words right there. So thanks for the nice things that you said about the show. Thank you so much, Ryan. I sure appreciate it. The next one we have was Kevin L. And we talked, I've been back and forth with Kevin for a while, and we've been talking practice routines, and we've been talking about loop pedals and some fun stuff like that. So thank you, Kevin, for the kind words, and it was fun going back and forth with you on those things. Next, we talked to Evan. I had got a message from Evan, and he's been filling in the fundamentals, and the podcast has been helping him stay motivated, which is great news. And thank you also, Evan, for all the kind words that you said. And I'm great that you're staying motivated, and I could help in a small way. Also, we had one from John W. And it's been a big email week this week, and he's ready to get a solid practice routine, even though he's super busy. And I think that's awesome. And I'm super busy myself, and it's not always that easy to find some time to play the guitar. So good luck to you, John, and let us know how you're doing. And also from email, Eli, and he's made a return to guitar, and he's playing out in bands, and he's been working on ear training, and he's been applying all of that to the guitar, and that can be tough. Getting your ears together is one thing, but translating that to the guitar is another. So great job, Eli, and I'm glad you're headed in that direction. Also on Twitter, this was a really good week. I got a great tweet from Craft Music, and they really like last week's show. It says a great topic. A lot of people out there really want to get back into playing, but just don't know where to begin. Sounds like a helpful podcast. Thank you for that tweet. I sure appreciate it. Also got one about that from Frank, and he commented on last week's show about getting started, and he said the chord changes have been slowing him down to a stop. And yeah, that happens. And we've talked a lot about that, about some tips, and I may give some more. I may do a whole show on getting better changing chords, because there's a lot of people dealing with that. And I asked an open question on Twitter during the week. I asked about what was your biggest frustration with music theory? Because I'm doing it, of having a music theory course that's fun and easy and gets you playing cool stuff with the fundamentals of music theory. And I got one from Dan, and a response from Dan. He said, staying awake is his biggest frustration with music theory. I believe it. It can be dry. It can be very dry sometimes. And Chuck said everything about it. Well, I understand, Chuck. And then Patrick, he said, understanding how different modes are used. I know what they are, just not when or how they're used. And we actually dealt with modes a little bit today, but that's something that I'm looking into doing more about too. Okay, in the Facebook group, the Play Guitar Facebook group, we have some new members. We have Joe E, Jeff B, Mark W, Charlene G, Gunnar U, Namita B, Barry F, and Brian B. Thank you so much for being a part of the Play Guitar Facebook group. If any of you are interested in going, just head on over to www.playguitargroup.com, and that'll take you straight to the Facebook group where you can sign up right there. Also, Facebook group topics today. We had people are really putting up a lot of playing videos, which I love. We got one from Carlos, from Claudio, Chris W put a few up, Namita B put one up, and Chris M put a few up too this week. So thank you all for sharing your playing. We really appreciate it. We had a live stream again. We've been having them on Sundays, and they've been going great. I do a Q&A every Sunday. So if you need some questions answered, I'd be happy to help. Just head on over to the group, sign up, and join us on Sundays. And even if you can't make it on Sunday, just leave me a question, and I'd be happy to get to it, and you can watch it later. And we have lots of gear posts and interesting stuff. And someone recommended a book called Zen Guitar, which I read a long time ago, which was a really cool book. So a lot of fun stuff happening in the Play Guitar Facebook group. And that's everything I wanted to get to today. And this was a longer one, but it was fun. I'm glad I got to do it, because for a minute there, I didn't think I was going to be able to do the podcast today. So we're going to go ahead and say that is a wrap. Thank you for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or whatever your favorite podcast player is. Also, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a review for the show. If you're interested in online lessons, go on over to playguitaracademy.com and join my early adopter list to get news on the opening of the site and an early adopter discount. Follow me on all of my different social media pages. Links to them are at playguitarpodcast.com. Thank you again, and I will see you on episode 38.